Welcome to Terra Nova Plays. My name is Terran, and this is a noob's only guide to Druid in Dark and Darker. This guide is focused towards helping people get to an upper intermediate level of Druid, starting as a beginner or novice level Druid, also known as the Tinny. Quick disclaimer, this guide will assume you have about 10 to 20 hours of Dark and Darker already, and you understand how to navigate the menus, basics of each merchant, basics of questing, controls, and map understanding, what each PvE mob does, and other beginner level knowledge. We will also not be covering high roller games or 125 plus gear score lobbies, although a lot of this info will still apply to those modes. This is a Druid-specific high-level overview, aka the most important things you need to know to be better at Druid today. Because of this, most of this info should be consistent throughout multiple patches, and even throughout later seasons. So why make this guide when there's tons of guides already by a lot of YouTubers that give very fleshed out and in-depth breakdowns of the class? Well, even with these guides existing, new players in the Druid Discord still ask very similar questions daily. Something along the lines of, "Hey guys, I'm new to the game. I was wondering what playstyle I should take for lobbies under 125 gear score. I'm struggling with XYZ. Oftentimes these questions go unanswered by the chads in the chat, as it's a question they've seen 100 times over. Or the answer is so complex that the new player needs to understand 3 more topics before that feedback even makes sense to them. It's not like the chads are unwilling to help, it's just that these are people with thousands of hours and have been playing the game since the early testing stages. Sometimes they just forget to mention the little things a new player may be confused about. A lot of these topics are simply muscle memory or afterthought to them at this point. So why listen to this noob? Well, I have almost 300 hours in Dark and Darker, with only maybe 50 attributed to other classes. I was able to reach Pathfinder to get that campfire skin that was obviously made for Druids, having only started the game 1 month before White. And that was even after the AP farming nerfs that made it much harder to farm rank points. So, no, I'm not top 100 Druids, but that's not what this is for. This guide is for new players, by a new player. In this Noob's Only guide, we're going to cover strengths and weaknesses of Druid, some tips and advice, spells, stats and gear, each form and the bonuses that they give, PvE, PvP, and some final notes at the end. Tip number 1. So this class is the newest one, meaning it's probably the least completed class. But what does that mean? Well, there's bugs, quirks, constant updates that make learning this class take a bit longer than others might. For all the people claiming, "Druid is busted, please remove the class," I can say with complete confidence, they've probably never played the class longer than 5 hours, or they would know it is absolutely not overpowered.
Behind the sorcerer.
I can't shapeshift. I can't change forms. So yeah, just know that Iron Mates will be continually updating this class, adding new forms, buffing, nerfing, messing with the spaghetti code, and you will constantly be learning. Tip number 2. Stop trying to survive. When you're first starting out, it's very important that before you try to farm gold, you learn the class. Gold does nothing for you if you don't know how to use the power that the gear gives you by spending the gold. If you play Tarkov, treat this like a scav run. The gear is free. Even if you die, you lose nothing at all. Don't avoid fights. This doesn't make you better. Although it may save you gold on the front end, you will never get comfortable enough to enter high rollers, 125 plus lobbies, and get that juicy streamer loot. You have to take the training wheels off at some point. Tip number 3. Be patient. Dark and Darker is a hard game. I personally enjoy hard games like Tarkov, Hunt Showdown, StarCraft, and many others. Anytime I play even a single player game, I always crank it up to the highest difficulty. For me, high risk and high reward is something I enjoy. Playing Druid cranks that difficulty up in Dark and Darker even more. This is not a W key class like Barb and Fighter. There are spells and forms that each have different playstyles and abilities within themselves. It took me about 100 levels and approximately 100 hours before I felt comfortable with the class. It takes time. You will die a lot. Understand that. It's okay. Don't put unnecessary pressure on yourself. You shouldn't be spending gold at this point anyways, so what do you have to lose? Tip number 4. Record your gameplay. In this Discord group, people would often post their clips of something funny, a really good play, or dying honorably after a great fight. I began doing this as well for fun. When I would go to post a clip of something that was unfair or unwinnable, I would notice mistakes that I made that I hadn't noticed before. Playing back these clips helps you gather information you missed while your adrenaline was high and greatly increase the speed at which you'll learn. Though this step can be hardware dependent sometimes, and some people just aren't interested in recording. So if you skip this tip, it's not the end of the world, but if you take this advice, I recommend Metal over OBS. I won't go too much into this, as this is not a recording software review, but long story short, it greatly simplifies recording, clipping, and sharing, so you don't have to use too much brain power like you do with OBS. Number 5, have fun. Remember, you're playing the game to have fun. Don't get too frustrated. Take breaks if you need to, run a meme build every now and then. Test things out, because not only is it fun, but it'll also help you discover why the meta is what it is, and what your class's strengths and weaknesses are firsthand. If you don't have fun, you'll eventually burn out and you'll quit the game, or worse, you'll start revenge gaming, which will cause you to lose more games and not learn along the way. Nice stutter. There's a good jump. There's person.
I come in peace.
Come in peace. Alright, now let's cover some strengths and weaknesses of the class. Starting with strengths, you are extremely versatile as a Druid. Druid has a peg for almost every hole.
What's up, baby? Take me out to dinner. Hey, yo!
You have Panther to run down quick enemies, Bear to brawl with melee classes, Chicken to get into hard to reach places, Rat to squeeze into spots that take others more time to get to, and plenty of heals in human form. Druid also doesn't have to carry very much healing or ammo like arrows and franny axes, so you have a lot more room for loot. Druid also has a very high level of skill expression, meaning content creators can post their clips of them absolutely styling on Timmys. The gear for Druid also tends to be pretty inexpensive, as Druid is the only class that can wear Druid gear, and Druid is probably the least played class, meaning there's not a very high demand for this gear. Druid also has an unmatched ability to choose when, where, and who you engage in combat with, 90% of the time. Sometimes you can get stuck, but between Dreamwalk, Rat Form, and Panther Slide, it's very hard for people to catch a Druid. You are the rattiest rat in the game. Literally. Druid also has a badass ability to PvE. With Bear Form, most mobs can't even touch you if played correctly, and even the ones that can will just tickle you to death. And if you do mess up, you can just rat away, reset, and go back in. Even at low gear scores, when your bear is a little weaker, you still have a spear, which is probably the best PvE weapon in the game. Now for some cons of the class. Druid is probably the highest skill ceiling in the game. It will take quite some time to get this class down, and even longer to become a Chad. But this can also be seen as a strength in some ways, because if you make it work, people will respect the hustle. Real players, not Reddit stans. They will hate you no matter what because you're a Druid. But let's be real, they hate everything but themselves anyways. Druid is also very situational. Most of your deaths will come from simply not being able to shapeshift, which locks you out of your class's core gameplay mechanic. This feels really bad at times and will probably cause you to become pretty frustrated, as it can feel like you lost due to just bad luck or something that was out of your control. But that's okay. This is dark and darker. That happens. But I do hope SDF and the rest of Iron Mace get this fixed sometime between now and when the new forms come out in a few months. Druid is also pretty gear dependent, although that gear can be cheap. You're at a disadvantage from the jump as Druid's base stats are pretty low compared to other classes, except for your base will, which does pretty much nothing for you. I'm not sure why Iron Mace decided to do this, but it's one of the reasons Druid is hard to learn. Without gear, you are a C- at best. And once you get past the noob level and into high rollers and higher gear score lobbies, you'll need to spend probably 8 to 10k gold to be evenly matched with somebody like a 4 or 5k gold fighter or barbarian at a similar skill level. Now I know you're probably thinking, but you said the gear was cheap. It is cheap, but you need a lot of stats to be evenly matched, so you probably have to run something like a full legendary kit, whereas a barbarian can probably run a bunch of blues and purples and get away with it. Now I know all the Druid veterans are probably closing the video out at this point because they probably disagree with the statement. But again, most players in any game are casual or semi-casual. They go to work, they come home and play a couple hours, or just only play on the weekends, meaning those other guys can probably go in with a 225 gear score and beat the players with a 400 gear score that only play on the weekend. And you can too, but that's going to take a lot of work and probably just as much luck. Alright, so let's quickly go over spells. So starting with Nature's Touch, tier 1. This is going to be your core healing ability. So this doesn't heal for a ton, but it works kind of like a potion. So you get hit by a goblin, you get clipped by any PvE, you just drop this, you get 4 charges, you can sit down and you get the charge back in like 4 or 5 seconds. So you can pretty much use this as much as you want. Just make sure it's full before you start any PvE. So you always want to take Nature's Touch. This is a core ability. Barkskin Armor, this was recently buffed. It was pretty useless before, but now it's not too bad. So for 10 seconds, it gives you plus 25 armor rating. It's pretty cheap with only 2 slot cost. You can drop this on yourself before you go into combat. It's not bad. It's not a must-take, though. So moving on to Dreamfire. So this is your only ranged ability. So Druid struggles really bad with range. So this is going to do 15 magical damage times whatever your magical power is to all abilities in an area. Now, this is a really small area. You have to be pretty accurate, and you only get 4 charges. So a lot of the veterans will say it's a must-take, but again, they're probably pretty good at aiming. I don't think this is a must-take. You have no other ranged anyways. Why not just focus completely on what you're good at and just stay away from what you're not good at? I do take Dreamfire, but it's the last thing that I'll make available when it comes to slots. Also, if you have Nature's Touch rolling and you land this, it'll heal you for an additional 10 health. So not too bad. Thorn Barrier is pretty good, especially in teams. Pretty much it creates that thorn wall. It'll damage anyone standing next to it for 4 physical damage per second. It lasts 8 seconds. You can also cast multiple of these, so if you cast all 3, it will create 3 walls and they will not cancel each other out, so that's pretty cool. You could trap somebody in. Like I said, in teams, if you have 3 druids and you drop like 6 thorn barriers on someone, they just can't go anywhere. Then you can spear them over the wall. This was recently nerfed. They can jump over it, but if you put it in a doorway, it's really hard for them to jump over it. Entangling Vines, this is pretty trash, to be honest with you, and solos especially. It lasts for 6 seconds, but it traps them for only 1 second in a 1 meter radius. It's not that great. Don't take it. Treant, to me this is a must take. It can be swapped out for Thorn Barrier, depending on how you want to trap people, but I like Treant. It causes most casual players and semi-casual players to just freak out because it's now a 2v1 kind of instead of a 1v1. It lasts 24 seconds. It's pretty strong. It hits pretty hard. I think it's like 30 damage per hit, which is a lot if you only have 120 health. It also does like the zombie windmill attack from Call of Duty where it hits twice. You can also use it to trap people to keep them from going through doors. Restore, this is also a core ability, so it's going to be a pretty good heal on teams. It's going to heal you and your teammates in a 3 meter radius. So 30 health over 10 seconds. It's pretty good. Next, we'll go on to this tier. So we got Mending Grove, core ability again. It's pretty expensive at 6 cost, but I always make this available. I make these 3 spells available before anything else. because this one will, dropping this and Nature's Touch will pretty much completely reset you in anything under 125 gear score. So your rat jump through a door, you drop Mending Grove, you drop Nature's Touch, you let it heal you up, and you go right back in. They maybe will get off 1 potion and 1 bandage, and you'll catch them trying to do their second bandage. So you'll be at 100%, they'll be at like 75. It's pretty good. 3-meter radius, targets in the area also gain 10% max health. It also heals enemies, so sometimes people will try to rush you when you drop this. Be careful there. Either be prepared for them to chase you, or just be far enough away where they won't be able to benefit from this heal. Tree of Life, it sucks. Don't take it. So as far as this slot, you have the choice between Barkskin and Dreamfire. If you're a Timmy and you suck at aiming, I would take Barkskin. If you want to have that range capability and that ability to catch other rats, if you get attacked by another Druid, take Dreamfire. Really doesn't matter, because under 125, you probably will have 1 skip spell that you won't be able to take anyways, unless you're just spamming Knowledge, which you shouldn't do. These are your 4 core abilities in this order: Nature's Touch, Mending Grove, Treant, Restore, and then either Barkskin or Dreamfire. Okay, so quickly going over perks and skills. Obviously, you're going to take Shapeshift Mastery and Spell Memory. As far as the options up here, it's actually pretty limited as far as what's good. Obviously, Herbal Sensing is a must-take. I'm just kidding. I don't know why this is in the game. I think what would make this good is, like, not only do you detect nearby herbs, but you also, like, gather an extra every time you gather or something like that. Then it maybe would be useful, but still, it's pretty useless. Number 1, core, obviously is going to be Shapeshift Mastery to have that instant shape-shifting. Next thing I take is the Thorncoat. This is going to reflect 5 true physical damage to the attacker. It doesn't work with range damage, it only works with melee. It's a reflection, right? So not only do they take 5 damage, but you also take 5 less damage. Per hit, it's a 10 damage difference. So let's take a rogue, for example, with a dagger, stabs you 5 times. Well, that's effectively a 50 damage difference, because he's going to take 25 extra damage, and you're going to reflect 25 damage. Put those together, that's 50. That's kind of insane, actually. Enhanced Wildness is the next one I take. For the extra armor and move speed, move speed's pretty good in bear form. Sun and Moon is not bad. Nearby allies gain 3 vigor and 5 magical power. I used to take this one when I very first started the game, Natural Healing, just because you don't have to stop and heal as much, but you get Nature's Touch comes back so fast, it's kind of pointless to take this. Also, 1 health every 3 seconds. That's terrible, right? 1 health every 3 seconds. So if you have 100 health, that's 300 seconds. That's ridiculous. Force of Nature, the only time this would be useful is if you are running the Natural Healing, Force of Nature together, where your Force of Nature will proc off of your Natural Healing. Again, 3 physical power, it's not really what you want. You're wanting vigor and strength, not physical power, right? So Dreamwalk, that's also a must take. So really, to me, there's not really another option except maybe swapping out Enhanced Wildness for Sun and Moon. There's an argument for that. All right, now let's talk about the forms. So you have human form, obviously, that makes you a human. And then bear form. So this is going to be your core ability, right? This is what you're going to fight with 90% of the time. Bear is pretty slow. You can't fit through doors. I'm not going to read all of this because it's pretty complex, and it also doesn't explain everything. It's pretty confusing. Long story short, you get a big buff of physical damage reduction, so you get some PDR, and you get a big buff to max health. You lose 20% move speed, so you move pretty slow, and you lose 20% action speed, so you swing pretty slow. But it's not too bad. You hit really hard. Yeah, you also can't jump, but who cares about that? Your left click is your swipe, so it goes from right to left and then from left to right if you hold the left click down. So you're going to inflict strength plus 5 physical damage times damage multiplier and pushing away the target. So if somebody has like a rondel or any kind of dagger, it's going to be hard for them to hit you, whereas you're going to hit them 2 or 3 times for every time they hit you once. This is really good against rogues or fighters who are trying to parry your right click, because the overhead right click is very easy for them to parry with the longsword. Just left click them. It's way harder for them to parry it. Right click bash, so you raise your body up and you deal strength times 200 times 1% physical damage with both hands and gain the ability to push targets away. And it works like Barbarian Crush, so you can destroy doors and you can destroy chests and everything like that. This is going to be your main ability against most classes. It also outranges almost every weapon except some two-handed weapons like Spear and Bardiche. You also have your skill, which is bound to your E by default. For 6 seconds, you gain physical damage bonus and more damage reduction. This is a really good ability. Pop that when you're going to soak range damage or when you're about to go into a fight with a melee character. So rat form, everybody knows what rat form is. You lose 95% of your max health, which means everything one-shots you. Literally everything. Unless you're stacking additional max health, you're going to get one-shot by everything. So be careful with this. They also recently nerfed it, so you get 0% move speed bonus now. And I think they also shadow increased the hitbox. This is debatable. Half of the Discord seem to say that it has happened. Half the Discord says it hasn't. So just know that you can die very easily as a rat. You literally only want to use this if you're trying to squeeze through little holes that other people can't get through. Your left click is a bite, does 1 damage, and then it also does 3 magical damage over 3 seconds. It's kind of trash. It scales with magical damage. Don't try to build this or anything. Right click just makes you squeak. Your skill gives you 20 move speed for 4 seconds, but then you lose 20% move speed for 3 seconds once that is exhausted. So I use this to kind of get some burst speed, and then you will lose speed, so just be aware of that. Chicken, you pretty much, like I said before, you just use this to get into hard to reach places. You're able to fly for a little bit, whatever. You're not really flying, you just get to double jump. Lose 60% max health, so you're pretty squishy, but you can survive maybe like 1 arrow from a survival bow or something. Your E will peck the ground and eat bugs. It scales with resourcefulness. Don't try to build this, but it's a free 50 health. All right, so moving on to Panther. So this is your secondary ability. If Bear is your primary, then Panther is your secondary. You're pretty much just going to use this to chase people down that are low on HP or to close gaps and also do the Panther slide, right? So you also gain 5% move speed, but you lose 25% max health. All the other healing things don't matter. And you jump 20% higher. You're going to be at 75% HP, so most things in the game will 2 or 3 shot you. So you have to be very careful in this form. You don't want to do sustained combat in this form, right? Your scratch is going to scale with agility, and you're going to do 110 times 1% physical damage and cause the target to bleed 5 damage over 3 seconds. So it's not too bad for finishing people off. Your neck bite is going to be your core ability though, so your right click, bite the target's neck, inflicting agility, 130 times 1% physical damage while you are frenzied, which means after you use Wild Rush, your neck bite also silences the target. So this can be used to keep people from casting abilities, which will freak them out, mess up their timing, and it can cancel abilities like Magic Missile for wizards and stuff like that. So your rush, again, that's your dash. You dash forward. You enter a frenzied state for 3 seconds. You can use attacks while jumping, and this can also be used in the air. So you can jump, dash, turn into chicken, double jump. That's how you do Panther Slide. And that's pretty much it for forms. So let's talk about gear and Squire gear. You can see it's because of the fresh wipe. They haven't released the Squire quests yet, so pretty limited here. But long story short, what you want to focus on is number 1, strength. Number 2, action speed. So dexterity, right? Dexterity gives you action speed. I take ceremonial staff just because it gives you that 1 magical healing. A lot of people will say, no, you need the move speed. You need the move speed. So take spellbook, right? Because this is minus 30 move speed. This is minus 10. But I'm not really going to be healing unless I'm at a safe distance anyways. So move speed to me doesn't matter at all. I know a lot of the veterans will probably be like, no, but if you have 29 moves reduction and they have 30, you're going to win because you have 1 more. It's not going to make that much of a difference at this skill level, right? So I'd rather have the +1 magical healing over the additional move speed. You should be at a safe distance anyways before you start healing. As far as your primary weapons, you want to take a spear. I take the flange mace and the lantern just so I can see better, but really doesn't matter. You could take quarterstaff, you can take rondel and crystal ball. Your primary weapon doesn't matter. Weapons on Druid, it's not what you want to be using really anyways, other than just like some PvE mobs. I take the frock because it has dexterity and there's no top that gives you strength. So I'd rather have the dexterity and the armor and magic resist over 17 armor and 3 health. As far as pants, we only have 1 option right now because there's no spells, but cloth pants right now, once you unlock the leather chassis, I take those, actually, so I can have more spells, right? Because it's going to give you knowledge. As far as gloves, I'm taking these, again, because they give you +2 dexterity. There are no strength gloves with Squire right now, but you can take the riveted gloves, or you can take, again, the, I can't remember what they're called right now, but the gloves that give you +2 knowledge. to be able to have all your spells in naked lobbies is really beneficial in my opinion. This is pretty much it for Squire gear. This is what I take. Really doesn't matter that much though. Going over actual gear though, as far as like when you start getting into 124s, if you want to like min-max 124 lobbies later down the road, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to just roll strength on everything pretty much. So let's start with the chest, right? We'll just work our way down. Padded tunic is going to be your best friend, right? So padded tunic is usually a little bit more expensive, but if we're going to go into like rares, you'll see once you get into rare status, the Dark Grove robes are pretty freaking cheap. Right now they're 60 gold and they give you 3 strength, right? And then you can also run something like action speed, which is really good, or vigor. All right, so you can see action speed and vigor is a lot more expensive, but 300 gold for Dark Grove robes, and 400 gold for padded tunic. So that's a big jump, right, guys? So it's definitely not bad to pick up the Dark Grove robes. They're trying to save gold, but the padded tunic is better. It's really what you're going to want to focus as far as gear goes. You're always going to want strength first, vigor second, and then action speed, and then whatever else you want after that. Sprinkle in some knowledge, some memory capacity, stuff like that. So if we want to go for feet, Dark Leafs aren't bad. Again, any Druid specific gear is always going to be cheaper. Dark Leaf boots give you strength, and then you can stack some armor or whatever else you want. But if we keep scrolling and we get to the more expensive stuff, what you really want is these heavy boots, right? So heavy boots are just better, period, because they give you more strength, right? They're not super expensive right now, but later in the wipe, they get pretty pricey. Again, you want vigor. Secondary to have that health. Talking about vigor as well, whereas other classes get +1 HP from vigor, bear form gets like +6 HP from vigor because of the way the scaling is. Vigor is way better on Druid than it is on any other class. So that's why vigor is primary as your secondary stat, if that makes sense. But yeah, heavy boots because you get the strength, and then you want to take if you can find something that gives +2 vigor. Yeah, here we go. So 100 gold for +2 vigor boots, right? That's pretty freaking good. So that's like an additional 12 HP just for the vigor. Then let's see if we're going to hands, riveted gloves, right? It's your only option. Take riveted gloves. Don't take anything else. Next, let's do the head. Dark Grove hood, again, not too bad. Druid specific gear. Price-wise, 30 gold is pretty amazing. But straw hat is your primary. Straw hat's going to be a lot more expensive. A lot of classes roll straw hat for the strength. Sometimes bards do. Sometimes rangers do. You want to take straw hat if you can afford it. But if you can't afford it, I mean, look at the price difference for 1 strength difference. 3 strength there, 4 strength here. I mean, is it really worth having that 1 strength? Probably if you can afford it. But 30 gold, you can do 3 of these, whereas you can only do 1 of these. Take that how you will. The veterans, again, are probably clicking off of the video because they're pissed off because you didn't get that +1 strength. That's okay. Who cares? We're going to do back next. So, Tattered Cloak. It's really your only good option. There's a case for taking the Mercurial. Yeah, there's a case for this. I would just take the strength for your bear form strength. It's really the only viable option. And then again, of course, you want to roll action speed or vigor, or max health percentage, because you can't get core stats on capes. But max health bonus is what you want over max health, because believe it or not, let's run max health. So this gives you +1 max health, right? +1 max health is not as good as, let's say for example you get +1% max health on 200 health. Well, that's 2 health, right? So that's better, right? It's that simple. So the more HP you have, the more max health bonus is better over max health. The same applies for rings and necks, right? So for the necks, Ox Pendant's your only option because it gives you strength, and then you want to get max health bonus and action speed. Again, that can get pricey depending on what you get. That's going to be what you want to run. Rings, same thing. There's only one option for strength rings. It's the Ring of Courage, right? Optional as well, you can also run the Vigor ring, the Ring of Vitality, with some action speed and stuff, depending on the price. So right now it's the beginning of wipe, so the prices are fluctuating pretty heavily. So right now the strength rings are cheaper, but later down the road, the Vigor rings will probably be cheaper than the strength rings. For legs, so legs is a bit weird, okay? So With legs, there's only 2 legs that I'm aware of in the game right now that allow you to have strength, and that is not available right now because, again, it's the beginning of wipe, and either they're all being bought up or people just don't have access to them yet. So it's going to be the Wolf Hunter legs, and that's going to give you +4 strength. Yeah, so it's going to give you max health and strength, which is pretty good, but because of the recent buffs, I actually prefer the Demon Clad leggings because they're going to give you +4 strength, and then plus, I think it's like 3 magical healing, which your abilities do scale with magical healing now. And Wolf Hunter leggings are actually more expensive than the Demon Clad leggings usually at, later in the wipe. I like Demon Clad leggings if you're trying to drop a bag. Now, those are usually like 400 gold. If you're trying to save money, well, what's your secondary stat? It's going to be Vigor, right? So you're going to want to take Vigor. These are way cheaper. You can see heavy leathers are 80 as opposed to when the Demon Clads and the Wolf Hunters come out. They'll be like 400 or 500, right? So heavy leather leggings are pretty much your only option. You can also take padded leggings. They're going to give you less armor though, so I don't know if it's worth it. I would just take heavy leathers. And they're cheaper too. So as for weapons, you want to take a spear. If you're trying to stay in 124, just take a gray spear. Take a gray spear. You can buy it from the merchants or the weaponsmith once those quests come out, or you can just buy it from here. 40 gold for a spear. You always want to take gray weapons because you're not really going to be using weapons anyways. As far as your secondary, whatever you want to use to cast a spell, right? It's up to you. And that's pretty much it as far as gear goes. Alright, so I wanted to jump into a game real quick and kind of show you what I meant when I was talking about Bear not being able to be touched by PvE, right? So if I change into Bear here, right, we got 2 Zweihanders. Watch when this Zweihander swings, I'm going to right click and backstep. Notice he can't hit me if I time it correctly. This is how you're going to want to run high rollers, right? You will never be touched in high roller if you play the game correctly. So obviously you're going to want to try to land headshots when you can, and this is also a lot harder against nightmare mobs, but we're not talking about high roller here. Look at that, didn't touch me once, killed 2 Zweihanders. So let's try to get this goblin to aggro on us. So again, we just wait for the attack, we right click, yep, and they can't touch us. So we're not really doing a lot of damage right now because we're completely naked. We have no strength. We have 1 strength, right? So 1 extra strength. That guy's dead. So as soon as he swings, right click and back up. So as your right click comes back down, what is this guy doing? So as your right click comes back down, you're gonna want to walk back forward just to make sure you land the hit. Also notice that I aim up in the air. That's because you get a little extra range. So let me see if I can use one of these light poles as an example. So if I try to right click this thing, I can't hit it, right? Now if I look up in the air, right, see how I hit it when I'm looking up? But if I look down, it will miss, right? So now it's missing, I'm hitting the ground. So you gotta make sure you look up, you get extra range, right? Especially with Bear's new move speed, walking forward, looking up. That's how you land those juicy headshots. Okay, so for spiders, for these little spiders, if you shift in the bear form, they can't touch you. Their AI kind of just freaks out. They will bounce you around and be annoying, but that's really it. They can hit you if they're behind you, I think, but they can't really hit you from the front. So their AI just kind of freaks out. I think they just died. I think they just killed each other. But yeah, from behind they can hit you, but from the front, you just left click them. They can't do anything to you. Alright, so now we're on a Forgotten Castle. Let's show you some more examples. Skeleton can't touch us. We just wait for him to swing at us. Oh, well, he's broken. As he swings, step back and right click. Because you're raising up in the air, it changes your hitbox to where they can't touch you. Now that right there, that is how you get hit in high rollers later down the line when you start running those. Because if you swing too early, the elite mobs will attack a little quicker. See, right there I was a little late. But yeah, just rinse and repeat pretty much. It's pretty crazy PvE potential. This works against wraiths. This works against centaurs, and in a lot of cases, centaurs will hit you. Sometimes just because they're ranged on their spear slash bardiche slash whatever weapon that is they have. It's just kind of long. But this also works against obviously other players. It works against wraiths. It works against demon berserkers as well. And it can work against spear mobs, but it's a lot harder to dodge those. But yeah, so see how I'm kind of just not getting touched at all. But I'm not going to sit here and do this for every mob. It's the exact same attack pattern for all of them. As they attack, you back up and right click, and they can't do anything to you. That's it. Moving on to PvP. Now this is usually what people ask when they're in the Discord asking for advice. Druid is often born in the wilds and forced to overcome odds in which most people would not survive. The key word here is survive. Honor is not something this class cares about. Man-made concepts like honor and ethics are not key to survival. Hit and run guerrilla tactics are what this class excels in. Stealth, ambush, picking fights that give you the advantage and running from the ones that don't. Remember all this when engaging, as this is how Iron Mace designed the class. If this isn't the playstyle you enjoy, this may not be the class for you. And that's okay. But if you try to play this class like a barbarian or a cleric, you will die again and again and again. Also, just another reminder, this will be a high-level overview of the beginner to intermediate PvP for sub 125 lobbies. Though again, most of this still applies to all levels of PvP for Druid. As a beginner or intermediate player, the nuances of each class are much less important than being able to understand the situation you are in. With that out of the way, there are 4 main categories of fights that each present a different playstyle you should take. You have W key builds, ranged builds, hybrid builds, and the dreaded mirror matchup. Starting with W key builds, they have a focus on having big burst damage and a lot of health or damage resistances. W key classes are things like PDR Fighter, all Barbarians, Smite Cleric, Demon Warlock, and some Rogues who probably need a bit more practice. Tactics for this class are pretty simple. You should win these about 95% of the time. Simply pop a Protection Potion, Nature's Touch, and if you brought some extras, a Healing Pot. Then turn into a bear and right-click them until they die. It's that simple. Be warned though, a decent player will bait out your inherently slow bear right click and attack you in between. Do not hold down the right click. Wait for them to attack, then as soon as you see the attack animation starting up, press right click and backstrafe. Most every weapon in the game will miss you, with the exception of some really long melee weapons like spear or bardiche. Those can be a bit more inconsistent to dodge, but they typically need to hit you 4 or 5 times, whereas you only have to right-click their head 2 or 3 times. On that note though, make sure you're aiming for the head. If you're only hitting body or limb shots, it may take you 5 or 6 hits, which could be the difference. Now that the brawl started, you probably didn't 2-tap them like you've seen in other videos. This is because your gear is pretty low in these lobbies. Two things can happen with these players. They'll either keep holding W, which means you just win, or they'll put away their weapon and turn their back to run. At this point, take a quick inventory of the situation. Are you full HP, or did you take a few hits? If you're full HP, immediately shift into cat form and run them down. Use your left click to force them to turn and fight, or even just finish them off. It's much easier to land than your right click bite, though it does do less damage. If you see them turn to face you, or you hear them pull their weapon out, back off immediately, go back into bear form, rinse, and repeat. However, if you did take a few hits, drop some heals first, and then do this method. As a druid in these lobbies, you will almost always heal faster than your opponent. This is very important to remember. As a druid, you're not trying to just win the brawl in 5 seconds. Some of these fights may be drawn out for a little bit. That's okay. This is a chess match, battle of attrition. Against W key players, you will almost always win the battle of attrition. Run away, drop a Mending Grove at your feet, and Nature's Touch. This will pretty much get you to full HP, then just Panther dash in and begin the process all over again. You'll be full HP while they may only be 75%, meaning you have the advantage now. Keep doing this until they die. They cannot beat you. Now let's talk about range builds. Range builds are pretty much your hard counter, and I think the class was designed that way. Range builds are a lot trickier to deal with. In order from least dangerous to most, there's Ranger, Caster, Warlock, and Wizard. The reason I said Ranger is the least dangerous is not because they're not dangerous, but because they can be pretty squishy, and if they aren't taking the perk that knocks you back when you get shot by their arrows, they can usually be ran down in Panther form, though Ranger traps can be dangerous. You should rarely chase a Ranger though, as they can probably be leading you into a trap. If you get trapped, they'll finish you off with a spear or one-tap you with shotgun. Warlocks are more dangerous in my opinion though, because a good caster lock will just permanently outrun you. If you Panther slide into bear form to get a cheeky hit in, they can just phantomize and walk away while still burning you with flame walk. In bear form, it's also pretty impossible for them to miss their curses. You can't use rat form almost any time because any tick of the damage over time spells will one-shot you, and Panther form is squishy enough to absolutely melt inside of their flame walk. Wizards are hard counters to Druid. Fireball will absolutely obliterate you in most forms, and Druid suffers from low magic resist. In rat form, you will burn from the fireball, or you will just die to its AoE. Your best chance to kill a wizard is to just W key as a Panther, but you'll probably die before you can do enough damage. In summary, avoid all of these matchups, especially against a decent player. Now you might be asking, but I thought you said don't avoid combat. Don't avoid all combat. This game is designed as a rock, paper, scissors. It's okay to avoid the matchups that are not designed for you to win, especially as a new player. Once you get better at the game, you can start trying to fight these classes. Again, in order, I would start with Ranger, work your way up to Warlock, and then to Wizard. But again, even in high rollers, I just avoid these classes. The reward's just not worth the risk. And then we have classes that are more of a hybrid playstyle, so somewhere in the middle of both of those. These classes are Fighter, Bard, Rogue, and in some cases, a Cleric. These don't differ too much from the W key classes, but they can be more difficult. One, because they have a little bit more flexibility, oftentimes a little bit more movement speed depending on the build, and the people that play these playstyles tend to be, at times, better at the game. I'd say you should comfortably win somewhere around 2/3 of these matchups. Bard specifically is my toughest matchup with this playstyle, simply because of their high action speed with the rapier, as well as their high movement speed gear and the buffs from the songs. They can poke in and out and just keep you at range with arrows. Soak the range attacks as a bear, and if you get low, just back off and reset. Again, you will reset faster than pretty much all of these classes except maybe Cleric. If you're at a medium distance, when they have their bow out, just turn into Panther and either Panther slide to get closer or run them down. Here, you're going to want to try to use Bite to do some decent damage. You want to force them to put their weapon away. When you hear that melee come out, swap to bear form and engage. Rinse and repeat. Bow fighters are a little easier as they play pretty much the same as Bard, but they're typically slower, and from my experience they just tend to be worse players most of the time. I'm not throwing shade at the people that play this class. I enjoy fighter as well. But it's simply because the class is easier to get a hang of, and a lot of fighter players seem to rely on this as a crutch. Bard is a harder class, so Bard players tend to be just better at the game. As for Rogue, this can sometimes be a stalemate. Sometimes you just can't catch them, and they should never kill you. So they end up just being annoying for half the match and then finally just walk away. Or they'll get cocky and think you're low because they shot you 12 times in bear form and they walk up and you just 2-tap them. You should never die to a rogue. I've had 2 rogue deaths the entire time I've played the game, and both were massive mistakes by me. One, I died to shifting to a rat with poison on me, and the other was making a terrible play getting myself trapped in a room when I couldn't shapeshift and my dream walk was already down. Take these hybrid fights every time, but if you've been brawling for a bit and you feel the player's just too good for you to beat, don't be afraid to just leave the fight and survive. Now let's talk Druid versus Druid, the dreaded mirror matchup. This one's pretty tricky. First off, it's bad etiquette to attack a Druid outright. Do what you want, obviously. This is more of a meme than a real rule, but Druids have to stick together, right? As the newest class, Reddit stands love to beg for this class to be nerfed into oblivion or removed altogether.
Alright, another day in paradise. Love my job. I don't get paid. Ooh, your account's only a year old. You only had 1 cake day. You can't post here. Ooh, you made it to the front page. Good job.
But if you must fight a Druid, it's kind of a 50-50 if you're both the same skill level. You'll pretty much have a standoff in bear form until one person drops first. There's not much strategy to it from my experience other than always be second to attack in bear form. This is because the attacker will most likely miss due to bear form's attack animation. As the second attacker rears up to do their heavy attack, the first attacker will miss, and likely take a headshot in the process. I personally don't fight Druids. I hardly ever run into them anyways, and when I do, I try to be friendly, but do what you want on this one. Well, you've made it to the end of the guide. Thank you for watching the entire video. I hope I was able to help you become better at Druid Dark and Darker, or at the very least, provide some level of entertainment. If you feel there's something I missed, if you have questions about a topic I covered, or if you have a request on another guide you'd like to see, please leave a comment below and I'll do my best to provide a constructive answer. If you feel you did get some entertainment or learn something, please take the extra effort to like the video. I don't create content to make money, nor am I aiming to be a career content creator. So this video took quite a while for me to make. I may or may not have stayed up in excess of 50 hours to get it done. But I do enjoy seeing my efforts being acknowledged by others who also enjoy this hobby that is gaming. But that's all for now on this Noob's Only Guide. Until next time, safe travels, explorers.